Hello. So, looks like I am flying solo, per the usual. Excuse me. And I missed last week because I had allergies, but I'm happy to be back and getting back into the book on the path and really enjoying it. And we actually left off on Sutta 5 on page 41. And if you are going back and listening to any of these and you're in our Discord server, Meditation Mind, then as I read these suttas, I'll be dropping any research that I did to better help me to understand what I was reading. Because again, I'm a Westerner. I'm from the United States, and so a lot of the terminology, although I've heard it, I haven't heard it in a long time, and I certainly don't remember what it means. And then there are concepts, that are just kind of foreign to me. So yeah, full disclosure, you can see what I did to kind of help me reconnect to this material, particularly as we get into the suttas, which are, depending on which one, I find them to be really complicated and requires a lot of, yeah, a lot of, I guess, critical thinking to really feel like I'm connecting with the meaning. Anywho, so that's what's going on. I'm on page 41. Here we go. So, Sutta 5. And what is the holy life? Just this, Noble Eightfold Path. And what are the truths in life? The fruit of stream entry, the fruit of once returning, the fruit of non-returning, and the fruit of arahantship. So I needed to go and do a little bit of research on what exactly that meant, and again, and what arahant, arahant, arahantship means. That's really hard to say. So again, I posted a link, where I just kind of did a little bit of reading from that website, and it helped me to kind of connect again to what we were reading earlier. So to my view, what this means is arahantship it's the path to awakening. It's having awakened. It's having awakened. And again, I'm a real novice here. So to my mind, the fruit of the arahantship means, so stream entry, non-returning. To my mind, this goes back to this idea of experiencing complete unfabrication, complete unbinding, which again, these words pop up a lot in the suttas here. So that's what the promise is, sounds like, right? So what is this holy life? What is this thing? Well, it is the Eightfold Path. In the practicing of it, in the walking it, in the action step of doing it, of living by it, you can experience this unfabricated, unbinding life that's free from suffering. So again, that's my interpretation of this guy. Sutta 6. And what is the goal of the holy life? Whatever is the ending of passion, the ending of aversion, the ending of delusion. That is called the goal of the holy life. So to my mind here, this might sound really distasteful to people maybe coming into Buddhist ethics, or this idea of actually practicing of experiencing passion. And again, I dropped a link, to kind of put this into the context of Buddhism, and what is meant by passion here, and why would you want to avoid it? Right? Why would you want to avoid something that gets you excited, that gets you feeling active, action oriented, that makes you feel alive, that stimulates you, that entices you, that titillates you, right? Why would you want to avoid or end passion? And so I think if you were to go in and maybe take a look at that ancillary link in the Discord server on this particular thread, it might help to kind of look at this idea through this particular lens. That passion in and of itself is not potentially problematic, but passion kind of lights that fire, right? That we've been kind of using, or really that Bhikkhu's been using as an analogy from the very beginning of the book. The problem with that fire being lit, go back and revisit, right? Go back and revisit the introduction and go back and revisit earlier parts of chapter 1. So, in this link that I posted in the server, they're talking about that, that passion for this path is, they say is in this particular link, they say is the Buddha encouraged. Living life from passion point to passion point to passion point is enslavement from his view. So yeah, kind of an interesting approach, right, to this idea of passion. It's very counterintuitive, very contrary. Monks, this holy life doesn't have as its reward gain, offerings. And fame doesn't have as its reward consummation of virtue, doesn't have as its reward consummation of concentration, doesn't have as its reward knowledge and vision, but the unprovoked awareness release. That is the purpose of this holy life. That is its heartwood. That its final end. So again, these tiny paragraphs that just require so much research for me to really be able to understand or even begin to think that I'm understanding any of it. So I went back and again, I posted a link to some information about this idea of heartwood and the Bodhi tree, which those two concepts are often mentioned together, so that I could better understand what is meant here by that is its heartwood. So I needed to read that to believe that I understand this or suspect that I'm approaching it. So what I think they're saying here is, if I'm getting this right, and he's saying here that fame, in the pursuit of fame rather than this holy life called the Eightfold Path, it doesn't lead to virtue. It doesn't lead to one's ability to concentrate and have some kind of agency over what they're concentrating on. It doesn't really do anything for our larger knowledge, our larger vision. Instead, what it gets as a reward is the unprovoked awareness release. So here's how I'm interpreting what that concept means. If you think about how your mind works, if you spend any time meditating, and I think to kind of understand some of this, you have to have a meditation practice going, because you kind of have to experience these mental states to kind of understand what the Buddha is saying about I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So I think that the unprovoked awareness release is getting at our mind and whether or not our mind is skillful through living a holy life or not unskillful or rather not skillful by perhaps maybe instead of pursuing a noble or holy life, you're pursuing fame, things you can get, things that you can acquire, stuff, shit, right? That includes power, right? So it doesn't have to be a tangible, practical thing. It can also be some conception of what you believe will gain you external power, right? But when you're striving for fame and spending your time in that way, rather than pursuing a holy life, then your mind can easily fall into an unprovoked awareness release. In other words, your mind can easily be pulled this way and that without your conscious awareness of it. Because you don't practice observing any of this, right? Concentration, last step on the Eightfold Path, right? Then you don't even know that this is going on. You're just like a slave to all of this. Unprovoked. It just happens. You don't even know what's going on. You don't even know why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You have no idea why you even reacted the way you react. You have no idea why you keep dating the same. You have no idea why you keep getting the same thing, expecting, doing the same, right? You have no idea. Because you've been pursuing not wisdom, but fame. Okay, so this is my interpretation of this. And again, I welcome an actual scholar or someone who grew up steeped in the culture of Buddhism to explain this to me if I got this wrong. I mean it when I say that I am an earnest student of Buddhism. I consider myself a lay Buddhist. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but I take it quite seriously. And so I want to come on and tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong. I'm absolutely doing my best and trying to keep beginner's mind first and foremost in my mind as I'm reading this. Okay, so there you go. So Sutta 8. As he was sitting there, Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, "Just now, Lord, early in the morning, I adjusted my underrobe and carrying my bowl and outer robes, went into Savatthi for alms. I saw the Brahmin Janusonan, sorry if I destroyed that, leaving Savatthi in all-white chariot. In an all-white chariot drawn by mares. White were the horses yoked to it, white the ornaments, white the chariot, white the upholstery, white the reins, white the goad, I hope I said that right, white the canopy, white his turban, white his clothes, white his sandals, and with a white yak tail fan he was fanned." Seeing him, people were saying, "What a sublime vehicle! What a sublime looking vehicle!" Is it possible to designate a sublime vehicle in this Dhamma Vinaya? So I didn't know what Dhamma Vinaya meant. So again, I posted that in the thread. But I learned that it is the religion that is said to be founded by the Buddha. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. "It is possible, Ananda," said the Blessed One. "That is a synonym for this very same Noble Eightfold Path. Sublime vehicle, Dhamma vehicle, unexcelled victory in battle. Right view, Ananda, when developed and pursued, has the subduing of passion as its endpoint, the subduing of aversion as its endpoint, the subduing of delusion as its endpoint, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, when developed and pursued, has the subduing of passion as its endpoint, the subduing of aversion, endpoint, the subduing of delusion as its endpoint, It is by this sequence of reasons that one can know how that is a synonym for this very same Noble Eightfold Path. Sublime vehicle, Dhamma vehicle, unexcelled victory in battle. You know, this repetition, so what do we know about learners? Or any kind of audience when we're trying to persuade. Now, again, I'm not sure that that's why the Buddha chose to, again, this is an interpretation and, but just based on what I'm reading, what's right in front of me right here and now, I see a lot of repetition. And anytime I see repetition in any text, I'm alert. I assume that it's pointing to it. It's underlining it a few extra times. It's emphasizing it. It's an effort to make sure that we're really getting it. Hear this now is what it means to my view. So he keeps repeating this cadence, right? Sublime vehicle, Dhamma vehicle, unexcelled victory in battle. So I thought a lot, about what does the Buddha mean by unexcelled victory in battle? Right, so here you have this all-white chariot, and it's unexcelled victory in battle. So I'm assuming that it's never been beat. It's been in battle, and it's again, I don't come from this culture, and I certainly don't come from this time. I don't know if this particular Brahmin, I don't know if he ever saw battle, right? But I'm having to assume that it has something to do with this idea that it's undefeated. It is the best of the best. It is the apex of all things, right? So here again, right, he repeats this kind of cadence: sublime vehicle, Dhamma vehicle, unexcelled victory in battle. So to my mind, unexcelled means that no other path has come along, and this isn't the first time that the Buddha makes this claim. No other path, to his mind, has actually succeeded in being victorious in the battle with the fire of our mind. There is path, he claims, that will win that battle. That the fabrication that arises through passions, the passions, right, that incite our, it's anyway, I don't want to reiterate all that. Go back and look at earlier sections, right? Oh, hi, John C. Hello. I'm not used to having anyone here. So that is what the Blessed One said. Having said that, the one well gone, the teacher, said further, one with the dhammas of conviction and discernment, always yoked to its shaft, shame its pole, the heart its yoke tie, mindfulness the protective charioteer, virtue the chariot accessories, jhana the axle, persistence the wheels, equanimity the balance of the yoke, hungerlessness its upholstery, non-ill will, harmlessness, and seclusion its weapons, patience its armor and shield. It rolls to security from bondage. I love that. Oh my gosh. So I guess, yeah, I think the dhammas of conviction and discernment. I love that. So to my mind, this is saying that we as individuals, we as practitioners, we can have conviction, right? We can have the decide through the action steps of the Eightfold Path to believe in the Dhammas, right? To believe in this idea, to have this discernment. But it's always tied, and I love this word yoked. Going back to the introduction, the fire of our mind, right? That looking for the fire escape, the Eightfold Path can be a map. It can be a map to the fire escape and the fire called our mind. So this conviction that we hold, this discernment that, one who chooses to walk the Eightfold Path is developing is always yoked to shame, uh, which is also connected. And here's where I don't really understand each part, why each part is, represents what part. I'm just not there. I'm just not there. I'm going to admit it. So the best that I can do is just to see that the heart is part of this, this relationship to our shame. And that through generating self-compassion or practicing present moment awareness, the kind of the things that arise as you practice, as you sit, as you practice, right concentration, right mindfulness, some of these things that are, aspects of the Eightfold Path. The heart is a big part of that. Mindfulness, the protective charioteer. Mindfulness, right? Why do we meditate? Why do we meditate? We meditate so that we can be more mindful in our day to day. That mindfulness serves as the charioteer, right? That mindfulness that we cultivate through the practice of right concentration, right? That's the last one on the Eightfold Path. Through that, right, we become the charioteer of mindfulness, right? We to my mind, that means that there's agency there if we're practicing, right? That we can have, again, I don't even know if I'm making this up, or if any of this is right. So, John, if you got anything to say, go for it. Your views are most welcome here. And then some of this I'm going to have to go back, and I've already posted a couple links, but I think I might have to go back and maybe post a couple more. Like right here, it says, "And seclusion, it's weapons." Yeah, I'm going to say what I think it means here, but I would this is when I really wish I had a teacher or like a real hardcore scholar or someone who actually is well acquainted with, the original language. I'm going to take a guess here that the practice, a lot of the practices in Buddhist ethics do require seclusion. You can't do it without seclusion. So I have to assume maybe that what is meant there is that in taking on that seclusion and going within and doing this work, which really can't be, to a certain degree in Buddhism, it can't be done with others. It's an inside job. That becomes your weapon. That becomes the thing that, obviously Buddhists are pacifists, right? But I don't think the weapon means going around and, right, you're not stabbing people with it, right? The weapon means that it becomes your skillfulness that you've cultivated becomes the way that you can engage with others, right? Your weapon, your tool, whatever, right? So that's how I'm taking that. Thanks for hanging in there with me, John. Right on. So coming into play from within oneself, right? There it is again, that idea of seclusion, coming into play from within oneself. That piece of Buddhism that has to be done in solitary, right? I'm just going to tell you a little story here. So if you've listened to previous episodes or you've like seen anything, right on. Thank you, John. Any of my writings, then you know that I've struggled with addiction most of my life. Since I was a pretty young kid, 10 or 11, I think, is when I kind of started with food. And so I kind of came into all of this also vis-a-vis a 12-step program, couple actually. Well, just one at the time when I first came into Buddhism. And I won't bore you with that. I talk about it in other places. But I found this book called Dharma Punks. And it was written by a guy whose dad is a really famous American Buddhist. And I think he's also might be famous for somatic work. I'm not really sure. His name is Peter Levine. He's a pretty well-known guy. And his son is Noah Levine. And his son, much like myself, although he was, I can't compare. I had a serious eating disorder. His was heroin. Okay, so very different addictions there. But he got into heroin from a pretty young age, and he found himself in prison at a pretty young age. I think he was still a juvenile when he got incarcerated. And to my view, he had the great karma the benefit of having a dad who had been studying Buddhism for a good 3 decades, who introduced his son to meditation. Well, what else are you going to do in prison, right? What else are you going to do in prison? I mean, so he took up a meditation practice in real earnest. And so I think that, I think to my mind, that's kind of the aspect of Buddhism that is really, really key. Maybe he hit a bottom. Sometimes you'll hear about people, you'll hear them talking, especially if you're familiar with 12-step programs, they'll talk about hitting a bottom. They can't, there's just nowhere to go but up or death, right? That's it. Those are the options, I've certainly hit a couple of those. Yeah, then you become willing, you become very pliable. Some people call it an ego death. You're willing, you become very willing to let go of everything you think you know about anything at all. If it means just maybe there's an outside chance that you can stop drinking, stop shooting up, stop binging on sheet cakes and throwing it up, in my case. Right? So it's also the scary, scary, scary part about Buddhism, this solitary part that he's talking about here. Pretty scary stuff. Can be. So, Sutta 9. All phenomena, dhammas, are rooted in desire. All phenomena come into play through attention. Now, if you really, really meditate on that, that is really flippin' radical. I just got to read that again. Phenomena are rooted in our desire. We want something. We want something. We want that money. We want that job. We want that girl. We want that guy. We want our pain to go away. We want to get clean. We want to have power. We don't want other people to have power over us. And this can be really overt. It can be really subtle, but it's all desire. In Buddhism, there's no judgment. It's very, very pragmatic, right? You'll notice you'll never hear any kind of judgment word used around any of this. This is much more like a recipe, All phenomena come into play, come into being, right? Manifest, make manifest, come into arising existence through our attention to it. So that's how I'm reading this. That's the end of the sutta. I love that, man. I mean, that's all you got to say. To my mind, that's why that's the end of the sutta. To my mind, that is just like a koan right there. That is just so radical when you really think about that. When you really think about the end game of what he's saying here, it is absolutely radical, and it's also radically putting us in the driver's seat. A lot. Although, go back and read earlier, go back and either listen to the earlier episodes or read the earlier section, right, about where you get into fabrication and karma and oh my gosh, it talks a lot about, anyway, I don't want to repeat any of that, but I just think this is a really radical sutta here. So Sutta 10 says, phenomena, dhammas, are preceded by the heart, ruled by the heart, and made of the heart. And to my mind, boy, Sarah B's big fat opinion coming at you, John, and whoever's listening. I get worried sometimes as a Westerner who's, subjected to Western media on a regular basis, because I live here. I get worried sometimes when mindfulness practices are taken out of context. Like when they're disassociated from their roots, like Buddhism and Hinduism. Or like Gnostic or early, Christianity, or when you take it out of context. To me, Sutta 10 here is kind of getting to that, because I think that a really big part, the practice, the meditation, all of that, that's one feature of all of this that is a necessity to be able to understand all of this, but it's not all of it. It's not the whole path. And Sutta 10 here is huge. And if you don't have this piece in any mindfulness program, I would argue that ultimately it's doomed to fail. If you can't help the people that you're working with your mindfulness program to see the inherent truth in Sutta 10, then your protocol is doomed to fail. I'm very passionate about. I believe this profoundly from 25 years of meditation and very imperfect but devoted lay Buddhist practice. Welcome, hello. At any rate, preceded by the heart. Everything, phenomena, everything, dhammas, everything in your life, everything, right? Go back and look at earlier sections about fabrication and how it's all through our own kind of intersectional lens, earlier sections. All phenomena is preceded by our heart. Our heart. If our heart is closed in rage, revenge, jealousy, right? If our heart is closed like a steel fist, tight, that's a problem because it's coloring all phenomena, all fabricated. Again, go see earlier on fabrication, go see earlier on the 5 aggregates, because that's coloring all phenomena in our experience. It has to begin with the heart place. So, wow, you think I'm passionate about this? Whoops, passionate. Okay. Wow, I got 20 minutes. Sutta 11. Oh, wait, let me just check with the chat here, make sure everything's copacetic. Right on. John, you're hanging out with me. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me to have a fellow, and I appreciate you. Sutta 11. Among whatever dhammas there may be, fabricated or unfabricated, again, see earlier sections, dispassion, the subduing of intoxication, the elimination of thirst, the uprooting of attachment, the breaking of the round, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, the realization of unbinding is considered supreme. So again, I realize that this may fly in the face of other religious or philosophical traditions, that maybe perhaps celebrate passion or celebrate, this idea of cultivating these in the body. But in Buddhism, cultivating that regularly is potentially unskillful. But if you go back and you look at earlier sections, it's unskillful if the practitioner loses sight, right? Kind of loses that sense of mindfulness. And again, going to earlier sections, that's the trouble with passion, right? That's the trouble with passion. That's the flip side of passion. That's the sharp end of the passion blade. If our passion runs away with us, then we can become very unskillful, very unkind, right? I'm very happily married. If I got run away with passion, I saw someone else that I was attracted to, say, right? And I allowed my passion to consume me, my sexual, sensual passion. Hope this is okay, John. Just trying to find an analogy that might, so hopefully this isn't offensive to you. But right, if I was to get really carried away with my passion, I might get so carried away with my passion that I cheat on my mate, on my partner. I break a commitment. I become unskillful. So again, notice that there's no judgment here in my voice. I'm not judging people who do that. But it's unskillful, right? So in all of this, I think the Buddha is kind of talking about skillful behavior and unskillful behavior through the lens of the Eightfold Path. And again, this is just my interpretation of what I'm reading. So there's always that, right? Talk about massive fabrication here. Wow, fabrication on steroids. Among whatever fabricated dhammas there may be, the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, is considered supreme. So again, mean, this is radical. This is a really bold claim, right? As I've said in other episodes, this is not my claim, but this is the Buddha's claim here. All right. Those who have confidence in the Dhamma of the Noble Path have confidence in what is supreme. And for those with confidence in the supreme, supreme is the result. Wow. Again, to my view, this is pretty radical. And the analogy that I'm going to use as a Westerner, and I don't even think the person who said this was a Westerner, and I'm not even sure if I'm quoting the right person. So you'll have to fact check on me, on me, John. But I'll remember too to look this up and post it in the thread. There's a saying that I've mentioned in an earlier episodes. But the thinker thinks, the prover proves. Now I can't. This was either Israel Regardie, Christopher S. Hyatt, or some other guy that I can't think of right now. But this to me is what is being said here in the last, this section of the sutta. What he's getting at here is that fabrication, right? That we can't, that's why Buddhism is an action. It's not really a belief. It's a program of action. Because at the core of it, and what Buddha's been saying all along here, is that the thinker thinks that we through practice, we're cultivating what to believe, and through our confidence in that, we're creating that. That's how I'm taking this. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but Sutta 12, let's see how much more I can do here in 444, loving that. How much more I can do here in 15 minutes. Okay, Sutta 12. As he was sitting there, Unabad, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, the Brahmin said to Venerable Ananda, Master Ananda, what is the aim of this holy life lived under Gautama the contemplative? Brahman, the holy life is lived under the Blessed One with the aim of abandoning desire. Is there a path? Is there a practice for the abandoning of that desire? Yes, there is a path. Is there a practice for the abandoning of that desire? I don't know if that's a typo. That's weird. I'm just going to say, yes, there is a path. What is the path, the practice for the abandoning of that desire? Brahman, there is the case where a monk develops the base of power endowed with concentration, founded on desire, and the fabrications of exertion. He develops the base of power endowed with concentration, founded on persistence, concentration founded on intent, concentration founded on discrimination, and the fabrications of exertion. This, Brahman, is the path. This is the practice for the abandoning of that desire. If that's so, Master Ananda, then it's an endless path, and not one with an end. Or it's impossible that one could abandon desire by means of desire. In that case, Brahman, I will cross-question you on this matter. Answer as you see fit. What do you think? Didn't you first have desire, thinking, I'll go to the park? And when you reached the park, wasn't that particular desire allayed? Yes, sir. Didn't you first have persistence, thinking, I'll go to the park? Right? In other words, I'll go to the park. Yeah, I think I'll go to the park. Maybe I'll go to the park, right? So we're not always consciously aware of this, but we have persistence when we're thinking about some action that we want to take. It's there. So sorry, I'll take that back. Didn't you first have persistence thinking, I'll go to the park? And then when you reach the park, wasn't that particular persistence allayed? Yes, sir. Didn't you first have the intent thinking, I'll go to the park? And then when you reach the park, wasn't that particular intent allayed? Yes, sir. Didn't you first have an act of discrimination thinking, I'll go to the park? And then when you reach the park, wasn't that particular act of discrimination allayed? Yes, sir. So it is with an arahant, whose effluents are ended, who has reached fulfillment, done the task, laid down the burden, attained the true goal, totally destroyed the fetter of becoming, and who is released through right gnosis, I'm not quite sure if I got that right, whatever desire he first had for the attainment of arahantship, on attaining arahantship, that particular desire is allayed. Whatever persistence he first had for the attainment of arahantship, on attaining arahantship, that particular persistence is allayed. Whatever intent he first had for the attainment of arahantship, on attaining, I'm just going to say on attaining it, that particular intent is allayed. Whatever discrimination he first had for the attainment of it, on attaining it, that particular discrimination is allayed. So what do you think, Brahman? Is this an endless path? Or is it one with an end? You're right, Master Ananda. This is a path with an end, and not an endless one. Okay. So, I don't know if you were with me, John, when I talked about this earlier about how I'm assuming that when there's repetition, it's again because it's really, really important. It's being emphasized. I just want to speak here. I know I only have like 10 minutes left, but there's just something here that I wanted to kind of speak to. Let me find it. Right, okay. Yeah, this one. Yeah. Okay. So he says, and this is the last example, right, to the park sequence. That he's kind of laying out this whole sequence about how the mind works, right? How he's kind of saying, hey, this is kind of how the mind works before we take this, right? Persistence, intention, and then action of discrimination. So to my mind, I'm just going to give you what I think he means here. In other words, so we have an act of discrimination, thinking. So I think what he's saying here is that, and I know that there's lots and lots of people who don't believe this, and I realize this, but I really do believe this. It's what Buddhists believe. It's just what we believe. That we actually do have some control over what we think. Now, go back and look at earlier sections about fabrication and how, for some of us, it's easier than others, right? For some, the conditions, and now you're getting into karma, right? And what Buddhists believe about karma and ripening, your karma, right? Being ripe for certain experiences. But what I think he's saying here is he's saying we actually do discriminate with our thinking. We don't realize that we're discriminating because we don't realize that we have any power over our thought process. This is why the practice is so important in Buddhism, right? That you actually practice is probably the most important thing, right? The Buddha says that constantly in any interpretation of his teachings. I don't know that there would be any that would. Well, I'm sure there's probably some, but that most would agree that action is of paramount and central importance to practicing the Eightfold Path. So here he's saying we actually, this person actually discriminated between a gazillion other thoughts that could arise in the mind called the fire of our mind, right? Or the monkey mind. And discerned, right? Decided to act upon the thought, I'll go to the park. So that's kind of radical, and what makes Buddhism very distinct, I would say, from maybe Hinduism or perhaps other religions that maybe don't believe, right, that humans have any, or that. And again, I don't want to talk about other religions because I don't know anything about other religions, but I have talked to maybe some people who would say, that's not really what we believe. I was like, okay, Roger that. Okay, well, with that, I think I am going to bid you adieu. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are well, and thank you for being here.